of Frank's really good friends, Sammy Davis Jr. Recently, Sammy and I were sitting around in a hotel room and discussing the various styles of vocalizing, jazz and so on. And this is what Sammy had to say about the Chief.
Who's the Chief?
Frank?
Frank's not a jazz singer.
Frank is not a jazz singer.
Well, not in the same sense of the word that I think of Mel Torme. Frank, you know, the last time he did was on Bop Goes My Heart.
Well, is that, I mean, in other words, if you can scat, that makes you a jazz singer?
Well, no, I don't mean that, but I have to equate both. Frank sings and swings in a tempo like so, you know, and he does his things, but a guy that can use his voice as an instrument. Frank still uses his voice, magnificent as the lyric content of it might be and all of that. He uses it as an instrument, but as a voice.
He's not doing Tommy Dorsey's trombone? No, I'm not saying that jokingly, but, you know, they say that every really good vocalist will lend himself to or try to relate himself to an instrument. Billie Holiday, Lester Young, and so on.
Yes.
And
I don't know about that. That sounds a little too ethereal for me to get into.
No, I don't know either, because I'm not...
But I can only say to you that, to me, when I hear Mel Torme do things, which he did in the early days, you know, the sports car album, which he did Lulu, and he does things with the group, the dectet or counterpoint to it, which are musical things, no lyric content, and they're not really scatting per se, scat, ga, ging, ging, but when he goes, one thing leads, or too close for comfort, right? One thing leads to another, too late to run for cover, she's much too close, you know, and the way he makes his changes, this to me constitutes jazz singing at its best.
You know, we can come right back now and hit on Frank's new LP, the one with Basie. I think when everybody heard that Frank was going to record with Basie, they thought, well, this is it, the epitome of all record albums, you know, Frank and Basie. And I don't know whether Neil Hefti over-arranged the album or whether the band held back, but I have said this on the air before, I was a bit disappointed. I think it's a good album. Please Be Kind and one or two other things really grooved me. But overall, the album just didn't come off the way I think a lot of people expected.
Well, is it because perhaps that the preconceived idea of what it would be was held to such a point that no matter how good the album might have worked, that it wouldn't have been good enough for Basie and Sinatra?
I'm sure you've heard the album.
Oh, I was there when they were recording it.
Well, was it the fact that, and you're more than familiar with Basie because you did the one album with Basie minus Basie. Now, the band on that is like really roaring. And on here, they really seem to do the trumpet section, which they have when they leave town. The trumpet section doesn't come across. Sonny Payne sort of held back. Even Freddie Green didn't seem to sound the same to me.
Well, I don't know. I think it's because mainly that there is, you know, without anybody saying, hey, we got a singer now with the group, that a guy that I think they were a little in awe of. And this is the reaction I got from the session. They were a little in awe of Frank. Frank certainly was having the ball of his time, of his life, recording with Basie. I've never seen him happier at a session. And I think both things gelling together made everybody a little leery. It was the kind of thing Frank said to me when we were in Vegas just recently. He said, you know, it's a funny thing. He says, originally, I had a thought. He said, but time and schedules did not permit. I wanted to go and do 2 or 3 weeks with Basie, either at the Sands here or up in Tahoe, someplace, work out all the arrangements, get all that staleness that happens out of you, so that you could then swing and make it the way you want it. Everybody's used to each other, and you could swing and ad-lib, because when Frank does it, Please Be Kind now on the stage, he's got such things going for him now that he has found, that you just cannot become that inventive in that space of 3 hours that you've got to record 4 sides in. You dig?
On one of Frank's, you'll excuse the expression, capital albums, the liner is done by Ralph J. Gleason, who is a respected critic, quote unquote. You know, what's a critic? And he said, Frank Sinatra is indeed a jazz singer, and he goes on to explain why, for the man who gives his all and all that sort of thing. And I've always considered Frank to be a jazz vocalist because I have never really been able to get a definition. Joe Williams, when he was on, said, oh, definitely, you know, and most male vocalists, even Mr. Torme has said, definitely, you know, Mel said, I definitely think Frank is it. I'm really surprised, although I know it's not a thing like you're saying, is because, you know, you don't dig Frank, because most certainly you do.
You know that, but see, I think the definition of jazz singing depends on the individual. You know, it's like beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, you know. To me, jazz singing is Davy Lambert and John Hendricks, Louis Armstrong, Leo Watson, God rest his soul.
Do you then
people
put
like
Ella
that.
in? Because Ella has been criticized of late. I mean, she scats, so does Sarah.
But Ella is a jazz singer. What they hand her to do is something else. And what she does commercially is something else. But, you know, you get Ella in a room and you forget it. And I'm talking about the excitement of jazz singing. Now, people, you know, let's face it, the word jazz has been used and misused so many times because, remember, Al Jolson was considered the jazz singer, right?
Right.
So the connotation of the word is something else. But I'm only speaking for myself. Let me put it this way, so that everybody who listens to your show will understand clearly what I mean. Frank is a very versatile singer. He utilizes everything about him. Every bit of good that he has, and it's, you know, it's too numerous to mention all of it, vocally, the intelligence he has, the selectivity that he has, and taking the right phrase and doing it. His batting average is like unbelievable. He does it unerringly. He says the right thing. He does the right thing when he steps in front of that mic. To me, Frank is the best cat who is on the line. I think that if Frank wanted to get and sing with Mulligan, Marty Page, and the Dectet, Miles Davis, and you gave him 2 weeks to work with these cats on a stage or something, he'd come up and he'd be swinging in that groove.
He can do it then.
Of course he can do it, but I don't think that when the Nelson Riddle things he does, like he went south of the border, or the Billy May things, I think this is good commercial jazz singing for a guy who ain't supposed to do it. Because remember still, wee small hours in the morning, you know, all the great ballads, and this is what people love him for, really. The girls will scream over the up-tempo things and the shtick he does involve himself within it. But he is a ballad singer. He is a man who takes a lyric and reads it and makes you cry, you know, or you listen to a thing like his new one, you know, Call Me Irresponsible. You want to cry because he has such feeling, such taste in doing it. Mel Torme, on the other hand, I love Mel singing a ballad, but I'd much rather hear him sing a thing where he can, you know, up, or even if it's a thing in this groove, let him go around it. Let him experiment with the melodic strain, because this is what I want to hear him do. And when I do him as an impression, people don't recognize it.
Right?
You know, I do a Lulu. People don't recognize it, really, until you start doing the changes with Mel, which Frank doesn't do.
The sound of Sammy Davis Jr. talking about good friend Frank Sinatra.